Hello, Lockdown Diaries, day 57, take 12, I think we're on now. I'm just trying to talk about long distance riding, really, based on a topic that came up on one of the forums today, just somebody asking about travelling back down from John O'Groats and whether to do it in a day or 2 days. And I guess from my experience of doing long distances on a bike, is that it's not as difficult as you think to do big distances, and at the essence of it, at the centre of it, is discipline. And I think with discipline, even on a small bike, such as I think it was a Himalayan in this case, you can still cover big distances. So for me, when I come back from John O'Groats after a Land's End to John O'Groats trip, I'll come back down to North Devon, which is about 680 miles, 700 miles or so, and I'll do that in a day. And I'll do it because I'm disciplined. I see that day as a transit day, not as a scenic recreational day, and I think that's very different. A scenic recreational day, I would look at 200 miles max, and that would give me time to stop, explore, meet, talk, to travel in a relaxed manner. But a transit day is very different. That's when you almost set yourself the challenge of conquering a distance. I think importantly is what time you hit the road. The earlier you can hit the road, the more time you can cover with the least amount of pressure that generally builds towards the end of the day. You know, if you don't hit the road till 10 a.m. in the morning, you know, you forget it if you're wanting to do 500 miles a day that day, because you've already lost, I would say, almost 4 good riding hours. So for me, I would be up, I would be on the road, 6 a.m, 6:30 at the very latest. I would probably try and get 2 hours of riding done or a tank full of fuel before breakfast. And then I would stop and I would feel satisfied that when I was eating breakfast, I'd already took a big chunk. I'd maybe already done 100 miles. And that feels really good. That feels really positive, because then by lunchtime, you might have done another couple of 100 miles. And it's about getting into a routine, notionally. For me, is I work to a tank of fuel. So say on the Himalayan, if I'm coming back down from John O'Groats, I know I can do about 150 miles before filling up. And so I will set that as my next stop. So I will fill up, I'll get a drink, I will be quick as I can, and then I'll hit the road and I'll keep an eye on the mileage gauge, and I'll see as I approach 150 miles and the tank's getting low, then I'll stop and I'll take a drink and I'll relax for a second, I'll do what I need to do, and then I'll hit the road again. And then you're starting to break the day down into very manageable chunks, which makes it very predictable. You can sort of start to gauge by 2 o'clock you'll have done so many miles, by 4 o'clock you'll have done so many miles. Part of that is also being realistic. It's all right to say, well, I'm sat on the motorway at 80 miles an hour, therefore I'm going to do 80 miles in an hour, and therefore in 2 hours I'll have done 160 miles. It never works out like that. To me, whatever bike you're on, whatever speed you're going at, you always tend to average around 50, 60 miles an hour. Obviously on the postie bike with the speed 40 miles an hour tops, I used to average 30. So if I needed to do 100 miles, I know it'd take me just over 3 hours. With the Himalayan, I know that I'd average maybe 50, 55, so I could do 100 miles in 2 hours. And that's how you start to compute how long it's going to take you to do that sort of distance. So actually 600 miles is 12 hours of riding on a Himalayan, and that's how I would look at it. So I knew that if I left at 6 in the morning, I'd possibly, with a few extra long breaks along the way, aim to get to the end of the 600 miles by about 7 p.m. I think, importantly, the faster you chase the time, the more fatiguing, the more tiring you're going to get. So I think you've got to sort of accept that the faster you go won't make any difference to when you get there, other than wearing you out. So why I like the Himalayan is that it doesn't exceed the speed limit on the motorway. And by doing that, it means that the motorway miles are actually quite relaxed. Whereas if you jump on the motorway on a big bike, GS12, RS1200 or anything like that, you're really pushing on. You might be hitting, realistically 3 figures at times. You might be sat at 85, you might be sat at 80. But with that comes the added concentration of dealing with traffic, overtaking, reducing speed and everything else that comes with the greater concentration needed at those speeds. So for me, going faster doesn't always mean I'm going to get there quicker, simply because I'm going to get tired quicker. That might be fine for a day, but certainly if you've got a week of long distance days, I think just dropping that speed a bit and just taking your time so you don't feel the fatigue, that's the way to do it. I think importantly, hydration is something that you always underestimate. You know, you might stop, you might get a coffee, you might get a soft drink, but all those things just add to the fatigue. And I think it's very important to just hydrate with water. And it's a lesson I learnt from Simon Weir, the ride. It was not editor at the time, but I rode down to Garmisch, the BMW festival in Austria with him, and he was telling me off because I kept having a coffee. And he was right, you know, I should have been drinking water. And if you drink coffee, if you drink fizzy pops, that's going to dehydrate you. I made the same mistake going across India. When I was going on the postie bike, I'd always stop and just drink fizzy pop. And after a few days of that in the sort of 45-degree heat, I was absolutely baked. I couldn't ride for a few days. I had to stop and rehydrate and then go. So water is your friend. Have a coffee, but have a water. And that's what I would say. Comfort is obviously very important. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to be able to do the miles. So really work on your seat comfort, handlebar position, also wind noise. I've been clutching earplugs because we talked about those the other day. But if you've got good earplugs in and you've got good sound reduction, and so you're not getting the booming from the wind noise and the buffeting, then I think you can do the 12-hour days quite relaxed, you know. If you're not trying to blitz out, burn out at an incredible time, and you just steady away, if you're sat there in a quite relaxed bubble, to me it's like sitting on a sofa. That's how I considered being on the postie bike all those hours. I mean, on the postie bike I did 400-mile days, which at 30 miles an hour average is a lot of riding. But the postie bike is very comfortable. I was very relaxed. I was taking in the scenery. I had a discipline. I had a framework as to how much distance I knew I could cover, and it was manageable. I did that day in, day out across Australia, 400-mile day, 400-mile day, 400-mile day. Each of those was at least 13 hours on the bike, but I never got tired from it because I managed it. So really, for me, it's about being realistic. It's also knowing your limits and knowing where you're starting from. If you've never done a big distance, if you've not been doing a lot of riding recently, you're not going to be bike fit in the way that you are going to be at the end of a week on the bike. And that's quite poignant really for the Land's End to John O'Groats trips that I do. When people talk about riding down to Land's End, they see it as a mission. You know, it's a big thing to ride down to Land's End, to do a 4-hour ride. And then in the first few days as we go north, it feels like big days. But after 8 days on the road and they get to John O'Groats and they want to get home the next day, after 8 days on the road, suddenly they've learned, they've built up the physique or the concentration to then blitz out, you know, a 10-hour day to get them home. And so it's incredible how quickly you become bike fit through doing the miles. But so don't be hard on yourself. You know, don't set yourself that 400-mile day straight out the bat. Set yourself a 200-mile day, then a 300-mile day, then a 400-mile day, then a 500-mile day if you have to. But again, be realistic. If that's all you intend to do on your motorcycle trip, do 400-mile days, then is it enjoyment? You know, there's enjoyment in doing a challenging day to test yourself, but is there enjoyment doing it day in, day out? And that comes back to the route planning. You know, if you want to go around Europe and you've set yourself this ambitious 10,000-mile trip in 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, then all you're going to be doing is doing big miles every day, and it will eventually grind you down and wear you out, and then you won't enjoy it. So, you know, if we do have these recreational days and transit days, try and break it up. You know, have 3 recreational days, then a transit day, then 3 recreational days, then a transit day. And by doing a good transit day, it does get you to the next point of interest. So what I'm trying to say is try and approach your trip from different angles to get around the obstacles of distance and also make it enjoyable, really. You know, I think that's the main thing. That was the last on the list, actually. Enjoy the challenge. The other one was comfortable, be disciplined, be realistic. Average MPH, I think I've talked about. Keep fresh, and mileage. So that's it, really. You know, covering distances is about being realistic, but balancing realism with ambition. Because there's nothing better, actually, than getting off the bike after a 700-mile day and thinking, I was in Germany this morning. And I think that's sort of a surrealism that comes with the long distance motorcycling. It's not for everyone. Not everyone's going to enjoy it. Some people like to potter, but I do like the challenge of that. Really, I can see why the iron butt sort of fraternity is so popular. And 1,000 miles in a day. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you're disciplined, it's within reach of anyone really who sets out to do it. Reliable bike is another one. Comfort is another one. Hydration is a big one. So that's it. Tomorrow I go and fetch the CB500X Rally Raid, meeting John from Rally Raid at Gloucester Services. So looking forward to that, and I shall do a video on that tomorrow and see how it looks. See how it looks in the flesh. So there we go. Cheers. Bye. Sorry, just to add, I realised I didn't touch upon it, but to me, the way you cover big distances is to have a really short, concise break, or more regular but short, concise break. So, you know, you give yourself 10 minutes. When you pull up, you get fuel, you get fluid on board yourself, you have a snack, you don't loiter, you don't linger, and then you get back on the road. Because every minute that you're stood at the petrol station or stood talking or having a cigarette is a mile that you've lost. So if you linger around for 10 minutes, then you've lost 10 miles. And to make up 10 miles takes a hell of a lot of speed, if nigh possible. So the art of doing big distances is to minimise the breaks to an absolute minimum, because you don't realise how much time you lose when you stop for a break. An hour break, 60 miles. You know, that's a lot of distance that you've lost by having a long lunch or a long chat or a cigarette. It is essentially the tortoise and the hare, and I think that's crucial to think about. Cheers.